Hi, I'm Lady Genevieve. Today's Bridgerton video is a quick one because I've been really busy, but I'm still trying to find time to make all my new videos. I was noticing a couple of things in season 2 that got me thinking about the show overall, and instead of allowing it to stay in my brain as clutter when I'm trying to write other videos about the show or any other fiction I want to create videos about, it seemed like the easier way to declutter my mind was to just make a quick video, share my thoughts, and open things up to the audience and see what other thoughts or theories people have. As a quick bit of housekeeping before I get started, in case any of you are tuning into my channel for the first time, if you are a reader of the Bridgerton book series, I will respectfully ask that you not put anything into my comments about any of the books that have not yet been adapted into the television series. I am trying to avoid as many spoilers as possible before watching new seasons. Today, I want to talk about some of the supporting male characters on Bridgerton and some of the creative choices that have been made for their material, and the questions that it makes me have about the general creative and production strategy for the show. One of the things that sparked my pondering about this particular topic is some of the male characters who appeared in season 1 that did not appear in season 2. First, we have Simon, whom I know was not a supporting character, but just hear me out until the end and see if you can understand why I've mentioned him in this video. Bridgerton season 1 was a massive hit when it premiered on Netflix, and one of the reasons for that was Regé-Jean Page. When it was announced that he would not be returning for season 2, there were some people in the audience who were very upset by this news. They wanted to see him specifically, but also in general, they wanted to still have that ethnic diversity in a Regency romance. Obviously, now we've seen that season 2 was an even bigger hit than season 1, but for the sake of clarity, I will point out that Regé-Jean Page spoke in an interview with Variety about him being on the show for only one season, saying the following: "It's a one-season arc. It's going to have a beginning, middle, end. Give us a year," Page says, recounting early conversations with Shondaland producers, who approached him about the role of Simon after For the People wrapped up. I thought, that's interesting, because then it felt like a limited series. I get to come in, I get to contribute my bit, and then the Bridgerton family rolls on. The British Zimbabwean star adds that he relished the idea that Bridgerton is essentially an anthology, with each book, and subsequently season, dedicated to a different sibling's love story. One of the things that is different about this romance genre is that the audience knows the arc completes, he explains. They come in knowing that, so you can tie people in emotional knots because they have that reassurance that we're going to come out and we're going to have the marriage and the baby. My speculation is that if Regé-Jean Page was dying to come back for more seasons of Bridgerton, they would have absolutely made room to squeeze him in. But with how big of a hit that first season was and the star power he was shown to have, it makes perfect sense that he would go and pursue some of the other projects he was being offered after the season was released. Timing is everything in show business, and I personally don't fault him at all for pursuing more of those opportunities outside of Bridgerton. The creative team behind Netflix's Bridgerton never could have anticipated the level of success the show would have upon its release, or the popularity he as a performer would have, which meant there were huge shoes to fill. And they were very fortunate with getting Simone Ashley onto the show because of how fantastic a performer she is and how much chemistry she has with Jonathan Bailey. So they were able to electrify the audience to a degree that, again, no one could have anticipated. Though it seems as if the Sharma family will continue to appear on future seasons of Bridgerton, the departure of Regé-Jean Page after season 1 is an important reminder that when you have a show going on for however many years, you can never truly predict when someone might leave the show, either for personal reasons, professional opportunities elsewhere. The list of reasons goes on and on. That leads me to believe that they want to have certain supporting characters set up in such a way that if creative inspiration strikes or certain logistics lead to a gap in the story needing to be filled, that they have options to choose from. Another character that was in season 1 who did not appear in season 2 was Prince Friedrich of Prussia. He has been heavily implied to be returning to be Edwina's love interest, hopefully her endgame love interest. I've mentioned this before, but I do want to mention it again for the sake of this video's discussion. One of the things that was interesting about the way Friedrich's run in season 1 concluded was that he was presented as being a really good guy. He never reacted with any type of anger or aggression towards Daphne, even though he was about to propose to her and she abruptly announced a surprise engagement to another man. This meant that even though he didn't get the girl in the end, he still had room to be an appealing love interest for someone else. Shonda Rhimes said in an interview that they're not necessarily going to be adapting the books in order, and now a lot of speculation has been happening that Colin and Penelope will be next. There is no denying that part of the reason Bridgerton has been appealing to a broader audience than just the people who were already fans of the book series is that the show's adaptation of the source material has included a broader ethnic and cultural spectrum of performers playing lead roles in these stories. It's now part of the Netflix Bridgerton brand, and you have to deliver that every season.
That's just my opinion. Everybody got an opinion.
If Colin and Penelope are in fact going to be the A plot of season 3, then I hope that the B and C plots will be Kate and Anthony being married and Edwina and Prince Friedrich falling in love. I'll talk more about Edwina at a later date, so I'm not going to elaborate much on that right now. But Prince Friedrich would not have been able to be a viable option to even consider bringing back into the story if they had him be really nasty to Daphne when she got engaged to someone else. You would have burned the bridge on his character the way you did with someone like Lord Burbrook.
Because you are an incompetent little baby idiot.
This background context and foundation you built with season 1 that I've just presented is relevant to my curiosities regarding certain supporting male characters that we saw more in season 2. Obviously, we know that Anthony and Kate were the main romance of this season, but who were some of the other players in their orbit? Edwina, of course, but on the Kate-Anthony side, we had Mr. Dorset, and on the Edwina side, we had Lord Lumley. I'm assuming that a lot of you have not given much thought to these men beyond the few minutes of airtime each of them have, and the ways that they facilitated fun, entertaining moments between Kate and Anthony. But considering that I've rewatched a lot of these scenes and episodes multiple times, minus the Featherington family subplot, of course, I can't be bothered, I started to question if these men were being set up to be left on standby for if and when the time comes for them to be tagged into a slightly more visible position on the show. I don't necessarily think that when Friedrich decided to go back to Prussia at the end of season 1, that the show's producers or writers had a clear-cut vision and plan that they might try to set him up with Edwina. Maybe if I was the one being given access to interview the show's talent, I might bring up more of these types of questions I have, but alas, I am but a small channel. We'll see, though, where we're at by the time promotion is happening for season 3. I know a lot of people who watch my Bridgerton videos are new to my channel, and I appreciate you being here. So to those people, I will provide a little bit more information about me and my channel that is relevant to my analyzing and theorizing about certain details of what might be going on with the production of a show like Bridgerton. Back when Netflix announced Shadow and Bone as a series, I got interested in following the series and its development because they said they were going to have a half-Asian lead. That led me to discover one of the show's writers, Christina Strain, whom I have had on my channel a couple of times, and she has shared a lot of information in those visits about the mechanics of creating that series, as well as the adaptation process from book to screen. One of the details she mentioned was about how budgets really come into play when creating something like Shadow and Bone on Netflix. That show, like Bridgerton, has 8 episodes per season. Shadow and Bone is a massive fantasy series with an ensemble cast. Bridgerton is a sort of fantasy in its own way, and it also has shifted towards a more ensemble approach to its storytelling. If Shadow and Bone were to be given a larger budget, then that show would be able to consider expanding the seasonal episode count to something like 10 episodes instead of 8. Watching Bridgerton season 2, I couldn't help but think about how much I wanted the show's episode count to be longer, but if I were to speculate, based on what I've heard about the production process for Shadow and Bone, budgeting has to be at play. Period pieces, even a more fantastical period piece like Bridgerton, are notoriously expensive. Things like costumes, set pieces, the wigs, the horses, and carriages, all of that will eat your budget up quickly. Shonda Rhimes is not the showrunner of Bridgerton, but she is one of the EPs. And when you look at the beginning of her becoming the famed mogul that we know her to be today, we get to the show Grey's Anatomy. That was an ensemble show, and you got to explore a lot of different layers and dimensions and relationships of characters, but that was also a show that usually had something around 24 episodes per season. But for Bridgerton, we still have that type of feeling, that ensemble sensibility that helped to make Grey's Anatomy so beloved when it first got started. Before Bridgerton, even with these smaller characters like Mr. Dorset and Lord Lumley, I can see the potential for them to get brought back in if the occasion calls for it, and if those actors are still available instead of having schedule conflicts from other jobs. Neither Mr. Dorset or Lord Lumley had any noteworthy strikes against their characters. I know that Mr. Dorset had initially approached Kate because Anthony wanted her to be less of a guard dog, blocking him from interacting with Edwina, but it was very clearly played out in the material that he was genuinely attracted to Kate and interested in her. He knew about India already. He liked India as a country. He was ready to go visit her during his travels to the country to learn about their medicinal practices, if she was willing to see him anyway. He apologized, as he should, and he was always really nice to her. Plus, think about it from his perspective, okay? I know we didn't get to see a scene of Anthony telling him to go talk to Kate for the first time, but just use your imagination. Anthony is telling his old friend, Mr. Dorset, hey, go talk to that stunningly beautiful, confident, self-assured woman. How do we know he wouldn't have already wanted to talk to her in the first place, even without Anthony's prompting? Now, of course, it was never going to work out between Mr. Dorset and Kate because her and Anthony were pure fire from start to finish. Truly a cultural reset of a romance. But Mr. Dorset didn't do anything to lose that goodwill with the audience, and neither did Lord Lumley. Ugh, that poor, sweet little puppy of a man. When Anthony played him like a fiddle into leaving to go get lemonade, it made me feel so much compassion for him, and I feel that way every time I watch that scene. Watching him run off to go get lemonade, and he comes across as this genuinely sweet person who wants to help Edwina be refreshed on a hot day. It's like if you have a dog and someone is playing fetch with the dog, but then they pretend to throw a toy and the dog takes off running, but the toy wasn't actually thrown and they're just confused because they don't know where the toy is. That's very similar to how I felt for Lord Lumley. He was doing his best, but he just stood no chance. All that to say, I would not be upset if Lord Lumley popped up again and got to find his own happiness in love. Is it my highest priority out of this ensemble? No, of course not. We all know who my main person is on this show.
The twinkle of the candles, it is as if we sit among the stars.
I'm sorry, it just hit me just now.
Edwina had a different romantic interest in the book. He was not a prince, and it wouldn't surprise me if the further we get into these books being adapted, the more the show's canon will stray from the book canon, since they've always been making changes, but now those changes have started to compound one season after another. It's not 100% confirmed that Edwina will get with Prince Friedrich. We haven't seen season 3 or season 4 yet, but that certainly seems to be what was heavily implied to be set up in season 2. The other supporting man I want to briefly mention, since this video is already a bit of a mishmash anyway, is Will Mondrich. I love him. I love his wife. We did not get nearly enough of them relative to how that subplot was being played out in season 3. I wanted to see the boxer turned business owner trying to build a more stable life for his family way more than I wanted to see a ruthless widow. If you disagree, that's your opinion and you can have it.
Choices.
I would have much rather that storyline be reworked in such a way that the focus stayed predominantly on Will, and then the Featheringtons would have just been a sleazy menace that were threatening Will's attempts to stabilize his family life because he has to grapple with this complex ethical dilemma. Should I expose these scummy bourgeoisie scammers and risk them trying to expose me for throwing a fight which hurt no one except people who gambled recklessly? I know that many of us are in agreement that Kate and Anthony needed more airtime, but I will admit that I like that the show is an ensemble show. I just didn't like the Featherington storyline. I didn't care about it. The concept wasn't bad. I just had zero emotional investment in it. That's all. What I'm intrigued to see is how much or how little these supporting characters come back into rotation in the Bridgerton universe. I like that the writers have the creativity and the ambition to build out this world beyond just the two central characters of each season's story. It makes the viewing experience feel more immersive. Since each season takes at least a year to fully make, from all the pre-production all the way up until post and the promotional rollout leading to release day, we don't know what's going to happen with any of these actors we are expecting or hoping will stay put on the show. We also don't know if Netflix will ever decide to be more selective about what gets made and be able to provide more money to the shows that have already proven that they're successful, so then those shows can have more episodes. Let them do 10 episodes per season, please. I won't even be indulgent by asking for 13. 10 will suffice. I don't know if anyone else has considered any of these other things to do with these supporting characters, but I hope we see at least some of them back again. Friedrich for Edwina, obviously, and I kind of like the idea of Will becoming Benedict's friend.
Apologies, if you'll excuse me. Tell me, Mr. Mondrich, I wouldn't mind some stimulation.
If Benedict ends up hanging out more at Will's club, then we'll be able to see how the Mondriches are doing and see how Benedict is doing outside of just offering funny commentary about his siblings. Not that I don't enjoy that, but I don't really like the idea of his entire identity being about his relations to other people. Anyway, I'm not going to go on a long tangent about Benedict, not today anyway. I just kept having these nagging, intrusive thoughts about these other characters in the Bridgerton universe and whether or not we might be seeing them pop back up the way Friedrich was heavily implied in season 2 to be returning for Edwina's story. The other possibility is that they kept these men likable because they just want to make it clear that not all men in the Bridgerton universe are supposed to be trash, just the ones whom Anthony has creepy conversations with at parties.
Simply pick the least objectionable and get her wed, bed and bread. Then you can return to more pleasurable pursuits.
It's showing that these men in this universe don't exist on a binary of endgame love interest or Lord Burbrook. Just to recap everything I've been through, Simon is an example of how actors might not always be around to play your characters, even if you would like them to be. Even if they're contractually set up to do so, other things could happen, so it's just good to keep some other ideas and characters on standby. Prince Friedrich is an example of how not burning your bridges on non-endgame love interests leave them open to potentially returning. Mr. Dorset and Lord Lumley are examples of characters that I think could be brought back if the creative vision and production logistics will allow for that. And Will Mondrich and the Mondriches in general are underrated. Now that I've addressed this on my channel, I will not have these people distracting me when I start working on other Bridgerton videos. Let me know what you think about this admittedly less dramatic topic. It feels a little bit more niche than some of the other videos I've made. Next video will be a review of a new Hulu film that I got a screener for. It looks really cute, but I have not watched my screener yet, so I don't actually know for sure. Also, the 365-day sequel is coming out this week, and I posted about that on my community tab to see if people were interested in me doing some sort of video about whatever that hot mess is going to be. And you can also expect something to be posted about Letters to Juliet, because I have some very strong opinions about that film. I might be one of the only ones that does, but there you have it. I'm going to be working on those while I, in the background, work on a longer Bridgerton video. So stay tuned for that and all the other videos that I just mentioned. See you in the next one. Bye.